When I told my family I bought the building their dentist's office was in, my uncle laughed, my mother squinted, and my cousin said, "Since when do you own anything?" So I nodded, picked up my bag, and walked out of the room. They didn't ask where I was going, but soon everyone would know my name. My name is Mira. I'm 36, youngest of 4, raised in a family where the loudest voice always won, where interrupting was sport, where silence was treated like weakness. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the rebel. I wasn't even the problem child. I was the placeholder, the one who filled gaps without complaint. They said I had potential. Then they buried it under noise. My parents weren't cruel, just dismissive. They loved results, titles, certainty, and I didn't give them any of that. At least, not when they were still looking. I studied design, worked part-time jobs, lived frugally. They called it drifting, said I was allergic to stability. When my brothers went into finance and logistics, they got applause. When I built my first freelance portfolio, they said, "It's good you're keeping busy." My sister married well. She was the crown jewel, a lawyer's wife, a tennis club member. She hosted wine tastings, started talking with an accent, one no one in our family had. The last time I saw them was at my mother's retirement party. She was a nurse for 35 years, woke up before sunrise, worked doubles. That night was supposed to be about her. I flew back for it, cross-country, 3 flights, booked a room I couldn't afford, took time off work I couldn't afford to miss. No one offered to help. No one asked how I'd managed. I brought her a framed print, something she once loved. I remembered. She didn't. "Oh, you're still doing that?" That was all she said. The party was held at my sister's house. 5 bedrooms, vaulted ceilings, all funded by her in-laws. She gave a tour, left me out of it. People kept asking what I did. Not in a curious way, more like, to get through the silence. I said I worked in design. "Interior?" one guest asked. "No," I said. They nodded, moved on. I helped in the kitchen, set up chairs, refilled drinks. Someone handed me a camera. "You're not in a rush, are you?" I wasn't in the pictures, not even one. During dinner, I took the corner seat. No one noticed. My brother gave a toast, talked about grit, hard work, sacrifice, said Mom had passed those things on. He named each of them, their accomplishments, then paused. "And Mira, she's still figuring it out." He raised his glass. Everyone laughed, even my mother. Later, I was drying dishes. My cousin stumbled in, half-finished rosé in one hand, lipstick on her teeth. "You know," she said, "I always thought you'd end up doing something cool, like painting murals in Paris or illustrating books, but maybe it's time to pivot." I looked at her, didn't speak, wiped the rim of a wine glass. "I mean," she continued, "at some point, don't you want a real life?" She waited for a reaction. I gave her nothing, just silence. I stayed an hour longer, helped clean, then ordered a cab. No hugs, no questions. I went back to my hotel, packed my things, changed my flight. Didn't tell anyone. I left the print behind, carefully placed on the kitchen counter. No note. At the airport, I opened my phone, deleted the family group chat, archived every text, blocked no one, just removed the noise. On the plane, I stared out the window. Didn't cry, didn't feel much of anything. I replayed every word they'd said, every silence they filled with something sharp, every gesture that showed me exactly where I stood. I thought of all the times I picked up the pieces, drove someone to rehab, lent money, covered gaps, smiled when I was insulted, clapped when I wasn't invited. They called me sensitive, said I needed to toughen up, that the real world doesn't care about your feelings. They were right. The real world doesn't care, but it notices. And eventually, it remembers. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say goodbye. I just left. And no one came after me. They didn't call. Not the next day, not the next week. Not for my birthday. I expected that. I didn't leave with a scene, didn't make a speech, just disappeared. And when quiet people disappear, no one rushes to find them. They assume you'll come back. You always do. But I didn't. I went home to my small apartment, 4th floor, walk up, peeling paint, thin walls. But it was mine. The fridge was nearly empty. Rent was due. I had one client and a late payment. but I had time and silence. Silence was something I hadn't realized I needed. No one to talk over me, no one to correct me, no one to ask if I was still figuring it out. I opened my laptop, updated my portfolio, rewrote my bio, changed my pricing. Then I didn't leave the apartment for a week. Not because I was broken, but because I was building. I worked a lot. I took gigs no one wanted, ugly logos, last-minute flyers, rebranding for crumbling businesses. I studied at night, free webinars, old textbooks, downloaded every course I could find, took notes, deleted everything that didn't matter. I stopped checking my phone, stopped checking their socials. I didn't want to see the birthday photos, the weddings, the group selfies. I blocked no one, but I unfollowed everyone. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. At first, the money trickled in, then it dripped, then it flowed. I opened a business account, filed an LLC, built a quiet little agency under a different name. No face, no bio, just clean work, delivered early, word spread. I moved into a bigger apartment, same city, different zip code, nicer walls, thicker silence. I bought groceries in bulk, paid off credit cards, tipped delivery drivers like they were saints, because I'd been one, and no one noticed then either. I stopped explaining myself to anyone. I started turning things down, clients who wanted too much, friends who only called to vent. I gave no excuses, just said, I'm not available. There was no announcement, no big post, no update, just progress. I met people, quiet people, people who didn't ask what I really did, people who didn't talk over me. I kept my name out of the business, let others take the meetings. I stayed in the background, sent invoices, reviewed designs, replied with one-word emails. My favorite word was received. It's hard to be overlooked when no one even knows where you are. Years passed, 3, almost 4. No birthdays, no calls. No one asked where I'd gone. But once, my aunt emailed me. Wrong address. She'd meant to forward a flyer. Subject line, Family BBQ, don't tell Mira, she's too sensitive. I didn't reply, just archived it. That summer I bought a duplex, low price, needed work, I paid in full, rented 1/2 to a single mom, charged her less than market rate. I didn't know her, but she reminded me of someone I used to be. I didn't visit, didn't take photos, didn't post a thing. I just watched the money stack, watched the peace stretch out, watched my life get quieter and more full at the same time. Eventually, I stopped thinking about them, not out of anger, out of distance. I kept working, bigger contracts, longer projects. Clients I used to dream of now came to me. I changed my wardrobe, simpler, sharper, colors that didn't ask for permission. I bought a new car, hybrid, dark gray, drove it without telling a soul. Some days I wondered what they thought, if they noticed I'd vanished, if they ever said my name. Then I realized something. They hadn't lost me. They never saw me. So there was nothing to miss. And I hadn't lost them. I'd walked away from a version of myself that didn't exist anymore, the version who waited to be seen, who worked for scraps of attention, who laughed at insults. That Mira was gone, and no one even noticed she'd left. The message came on a Thursday. Subject, Dad, hospital. From my sister. No greeting, no signature, just 3 lines. Dad collapsed at work. They think it was a stroke. Can you come? I read it twice. Then closed the laptop, went back to work. I didn't reply. Not right away. 3 years, no calls, no cards, no questions. But when someone fell, they remembered I existed. 2 days later, a voicemail. My brother. His voice cracked, like he'd run upstairs. Hey, Mira, I know things haven't been, but we're all here, at the hospital. It'd mean a lot if you came. He paused. We don't know how bad it is. I waited until morning. Then I booked a flight. Economy, window seat. No luggage except a black coat, a charger, and a paperback. I arrived, didn't tell anyone. Took a cab straight to the hospital. Walked through the lobby like I'd never left. The place smelled the same. Antiseptic and vending machine coffee. I found the room, didn't knock. My mother turned first. Her face shifted, tried to arrange itself into something warm. Didn't quite make it. Mira, she said, like a question. My sister stood behind her, still in her tennis whites. She said nothing, just stared. My brother got up, gave me a quick hug, too hard, too fast. "He's stable," he said, like that explained everything. I nodded, walked to the bed. My father looked small, wires, tubes, eyes closed. His hands didn't look like the ones that used to fix the garage door with a wrench and a grunt. I said nothing. I just looked, stayed still. They asked if I'd eaten. I said yes. I hadn't. They asked where I was staying. I said I had it handled. I did. They asked if I could stay a few days. I didn't answer. We sat like that for a while, them chatting softly, me listening. They didn't ask what I'd been doing, didn't ask where I lived, didn't ask anything that mattered, and that told me everything. Eventually, my mother brought it up. "We've had a rough time, Mira. Money's tight. Your father's pension is a mess. And insurance," she sighed. "Anyway, I know you're working. Maybe there's something you could contribute?" She didn't say help. She said contribute, like I was a shareholder. And this was a quarterly report. I kept my voice flat. "I'll think about it." That was enough to make her smile. We stayed 2 more hours. Then my sister offered me a ride. I said no. I walked. 10 blocks in cold wind. Didn't pull my coat tighter. Didn't put on music. Just let the noise of the city fill my ears. I stayed at a hotel downtown, booked under my assistant's name. Suite with a kitchenette, 12th floor, view of the river. I didn't sleep much, didn't need to. The next morning, I returned. My aunt was there this time. She hugged me, smelled like hairspray and judgment. "We've missed you, honey," she said. I didn't answer. In the hallway, I ran into my cousin, the same one who once told me to pivot. She looked tired, wrinkles under expensive makeup. "You look different," she said. I smiled, didn't say thank you. They had a group chat going. I saw the name over someone's shoulder. Family Pulse. I wasn't in it. They spoke in whispers when I was near, paused conversations, laughed a little too loudly when I walked away. My silence unnerved them. They expected a story, an explanation. They didn't get one. At one point, my brother cornered me by the vending machine. "Look," he said, "I know we gave you a hard time. Back then, but it was all in fun, right?" I looked at him. "Sure." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Things are different now," he said. "We're all just trying to hold it together." He paused again. "Some of us could really use a break, like help with rent, bills." He laughed nervously. "Just for a few months." I looked at the machine, pressed the button for black coffee, watched the paper cup drop into place. Then I walked away. No answer. The third day, I walked into the hospital room alone. My father was awake. He looked at me, blinking, then gave a slow nod. He couldn't speak yet, but I didn't need him to. I sat beside him, took out my sketchbook, the same kind I used as a kid. Started drawing, not him, just shapes, light. The shadows on the floor. He watched, didn't look away. When the others came in, I stood, tore the page out, left it on the side table. No one asked about it. Later that night, my mother approached me outside the cafeteria. "We've talked about it," she said. "The house might go on the market, but if we could find a way to keep it." She waited. I nodded. "I understand." I didn't offer more. She looked confused, like she was waiting for the version of me she remembered. The girl who filled in gaps, who said yes before being asked. That girl wasn't here, not anymore. Before I left town, I visited the neighborhood, walked past the old family house, same cracked porch, same chipping paint. I didn't stop, just kept walking. They never saw me, so they never knew what I became. And now that I was back, they didn't know what to do with me. I wasn't angry, I just wasn't theirs anymore. After I flew home, they called 3 times. I let it ring, then blocked the numbers. I didn't want to explain what they'd already shown me. They needed help, and they thought I owed them. I didn't. My assistant got a call the next week from a woman claiming to be my cousin, asking for my schedule, wanting to reconnect. She said I'd changed, that family was important, that they didn't mean to push me out. I told my assistant to ignore it. No reply, no forwarding, just delete. Then the emails started. From my mother, short, polite, each one a question with a price. "Can you help with Dad's medication? Do you know anyone hiring? Your sister says she might lose the house. I read every word, then archived them, every one. No answer. They didn't ask how I was. They asked what I could give, so I gave them silence. One day, a letter arrived, real paper, from my father's lawyer. His will was being revised. I'd been included again. My name was written back in, but there was a note. Contingent on agreement. I sent a message to the lawyer, brief, director. Remove my name, completely, thank you. He responded within minutes, confused, then compliant. He asked if I'd like to designate someone else. I did. I named my cousin Lena, the one they mocked for marrying beneath her, the one who was never invited to the nicer dinners, the one who sent me care packages in college when no one else remembered I was still enrolled. She got everything that was meant for me. She didn't ask for it, didn't know until the paperwork arrived. She called me crying. I let it go to voicemail. I sent her one text. No one saw you either. Now they will. Then I turned off my phone. My brother's mortgage application was denied. He asked if I could co-sign. I didn't respond. My sister emailed an invitation to her anniversary party, attached a registry, every item over $200. I sent nothing, not even a no. My mother called again, from a different number, left a voicemail. Mira, you've made your point. You've punished us long enough. Don't you think it's time to come home? I deleted it, didn't flinch. I was home, and it was quiet. That winter, I made a list, not of people to repay, but people to remember. A former teacher, a barista who let me sit for hours, a roommate who covered my rent one December, a retired neighbor who once gave me a winter coat. I found them, one by one, sent checks, no name, no note, just what they needed. No one asked where it came from, no one asked why. But I knew. I wasn't taking anything away from my family. I was putting it where it belonged, where it had value, where it was seen. Years passed. I grew quieter, more precise. The agency kept growing. I hired designers like me, outcasts, late bloomers, people who didn't get invited to the first table. I didn't mentor them, didn't give long speeches, just paid well, listened, let them stay invisible if they wanted. One of them asked once, "Do you have family?" I said, "I used to." There was no emotion in it, just fact. One spring, I got a wedding invite, my niece, daughter of the sister who once said, "Maybe it's time to give up your little projects." The envelope was hand-addressed, inside my name, spelled correctly. A note, "We hope you'll come." I didn't. Instead, I sent a gift, a custom illustration, soft lines, muted tones, a drawing of her, as a child, holding a paper crown. I signed it, "Keep it." She posted it on social media, said it was her favorite gift, said she didn't know who it was from. Her mother did. She didn't comment. Later that month, my father died. They didn't tell me. I found out from Lena. She texted, simply, "He's gone." I waited a few minutes, then replied, "Okay." The funeral came and went. No one asked where I was. No one called. I imagined the conversations. She always was distant. She didn't even show up. She never really cared. That was fine. Let them believe that. Let them build a story that protected them. I didn't need the last word. I already had the final decision. My brother's business failed. He posted a fundraiser, shared it on all platforms. I saw it, didn't click. I donated to a local shelter instead. In his city, same street, same block. They sent a thank you letter, addressed to no one. I framed it, put it in the hallway, not as a trophy, as a reminder that you can give without being seen, that you can matter without being loud, that you can leave and never look back and still move forward. Sometimes I pass my reflection in the window, in the mirror, in storefronts. I don't always recognize her. She doesn't flinch, doesn't soften, doesn't apologize. She looks like someone they never expected me to become. And that's the point. They thought I was still the quiet girl. I let them believe that as I walked past them for the last time. If you've ever lived a story like this, you're not alone. Feel free to share it below.